Definitely my favorite. Yeah, I love her. You are looking at the world's greatest male interpreter of Gertie McDowell. I seem to be the only one, so I can say that with a degree of certitude. Who was Gertie? Well, I sometimes think of her as a kind of a flighty Molly. If Molly's big word is yes, yes, and Gertie's is oh. So there's a different way of looking at it. Molly talks a good bit about it, Gertie just goes for it. Anyway, let's set the scene here in Dublin, dear old dirty Dublin, on Sandymount Strand. It's 8 p.m. on June 16th. And for anyone who's been in Ireland in midsummer, it never really gets dark. So she is there with two of her friends, Edie Boardman and Sissy Caffrey, and their nephews and brothers. But Edie and Sissy are kind of like mean girls, because Gertie made a big mistake. She confided in them that she had been dumped unceremoniously by a Dublin cad, not Colin. Reggie Wiley had dumped her, and she's still feeling the pain. Now, off in the distance, you can hear Canon O'Hanlon as he conducts benediction. For those of you who weren't born into the one true Catholic and Apostolic faith, just turn to your nearest papist and ask what benediction is. In the meantime, Edie and Sissy run down to the beach, and Gertie becomes aware of a stranger dressed in black, a really nice looking man, very distinguished. And yeah, he's over there. Yeah. Very distinguished, and he's looking at her, but he's looking at her in a particular way. And because she's had this heartbreak, she's kind of open to this advance. So let us pick up the scene. How moving the scene there in the gathering twilight. The last glimpse of Erin, the touching chime of those evening bells, and at the same time, a bat flew forth from the ivy belfry, through the dusk, hither, thither, with a tiny, lost cry. And she could see far away the lights of the lighthouses, so picturesque she would have loved to do with a box of paints, because it was easier than to make a man. And soon the lamplighter would be going his rounds, past the Presbyterian church grounds, and along by shady Tritonville Avenue, where the couples walked, and lighting the lamp near her window. For Gertie had her dreams that no one knew of. Gertie loved to read poetry. And oft times the beauty of poetry, so sad in its transient loveliness, had misted her eyes with silent tears that the years were slipping by for her, one by one. And but for that one shortcoming, she knew she need fear no competition. And that was an accident, coming down Dalkey Hill, and she always tried to conceal it. But in the end, it must end, she felt. If she saw that magic lure in the stranger's eyes, there would be no holding back for her. Love laughs at locksmiths. Gertie would make the great sacrifice. Her every effort would be to share the stranger's thoughts. Dearer than the whole world would she be to him, and gild his days with happiness. But first, There was the all-important question, and she was dying to know, was he a married man? Or a widower who had lost his wife? Or some tragedy like the nobleman with the foreign name from the land of song? But even if, what then? Would it make a very great difference? From everything in the least indelicate, Gertie's fine-bred nature instinctively recoiled. She loathed that sort of person, the fallen woman off the accommodation walk beside the daughter that went with soldiers and coarse men with no respect for a girl's honor, degrading the sex, and be taken up to the police station. No, not that. She and the stranger would be good friends, like the big brother and sister without all that other. In spite of the conventions of society with a big S. Perhaps it was an old flame he was in mourning for, from the days beyond recall. She thought she could understand. She would try to understand him because men were so different. The old love was waiting with little white hands stretched out with blue, appealing eyes. Heart of mine, Gertie would follow her dream of love, the dictates of her heart that told her that the stranger was her all in all, the only man in the world for her, for love, was the master guide. Nothing else mattered. Come what might, Gertie would be wild, untrammeled, free. Canon O'Hanlon put the Blessed Sacrament back into the tabernacle, and the choir sang, Laudate Dominum, omnes gentes. And then the canon locked the tabernacle door because the benediction was over, and Father Conroy handed him his hat to put on, and Crosscat Edie asked, wasn't she coming? But Jackie Caffrey called out, oh look, Sissy! And they all looked. Was it sheet lightning? But Tommy saw it too, over the trees, beside the church, blue, then green and purple. It's fireworks! Sissy Caffrey said, and they all ran down the Strand to see over the houses and the church helter-skelter, Edie with a pushcar with baby Boardman in it, and Sissy holding Tommy and Jackie by the hand so they wouldn't fall running. Come on, Gertie! Sissy called. It's the bizarre fireworks! But Gertie was adamant. She had no intention of being at their beck and call. If they could run like Rossi, she could sit, so she said. She could see from where she was. The eyes of the stranger were fastened upon her, and they set her pulses tingling. She looked at him a moment, meeting his glance, and a light broke in upon her. White-hot passion was in that face, passion silent as the grave, and it made her his. At last they were left alone without the others to pry and pass remarks, and she knew he could be trusted to the death, steadfast, a sterling man, a man of inflexible honor to his fingertips. His hands and face were working, and a tremor went over her. She leaned back far to look up where the fireworks were, and she caught her knee in her hands so as not to fall back, looking up, and there was no one to see, only him and her, when she revealed all her graceful, beautifully shaped legs like that, subtly soft and delicately rounded, and she seemed to hear the panting of his heart, his hoarse breathing, because she knew about the past. passion of men, like that hot-blooded, because Bertha Supple told her once in dead secret and made her swear that she'd never, but the gentleman lodger that was staying with them out at the congested districts board that had pictures cut out of papers of those skirt dancers and high kickers, and she said, "You used to do something not very nice that you could imagine sometimes in the bed." But this was altogether different from a thing like that, because there was all the difference, because she could almost feel him draw her face to his, and the first quick hot touch of his handsome lips. Besides, there was absolution so long as you didn't do the other thing before being married, and there ought to be women priests that would understand without your telling out. And Sissy Caffrey too sometimes had that dreamy look in her eyes, so that she too, my dear, and Winnie Rippingham, so mad about actors' photographs, and beside, it was on account of that other thing coming on the way it did. And Jackie Caffrey shouted to look, there was another. And Gertie leaned back, and the garters were blue to match on account of the transparent, and they all saw it and shouted to look, there it was. And she leaned back ever so far to see the fireworks, and something queer was flying about through the air, a soft thing to and fro dark, and she saw a long Roman candle going up over the trees, up, and in the tense hush, they were all breathless with excitement as it went higher and higher, and she had to lean back more and more to look up after it, high, almost out of sight, and her face was suffused with a divine and entrancing blush from straining back. And she could see her other things too, nameslip knickers, the fabric that caresses the skin, better than those other petty with the green 4 and 11 on account of being white. And she led him, and she saw that he saw, and then it went so high it went out of sight a moment, and she was trembling in every limb from being bent so far back. He had a full view high up over her knee, no one ever, not even on the swing or waiting, and she wasn't ashamed, and he wasn't either, to look in that immodest way like that, because he couldn't resist the sight of the wondrous revealment half offered, like those skirt dancers behaving so immodest before gentlemen looking, and he kept on looking. She would fain have cried to him chokingly, held out her snowy, slender arms to him to come, to feel his lips laid on her white brow, the cry of a young girl's love, a little strangled cry wrung from her, that cry that has rung through the ages. And then a rocket sprang, and bang, shoot, blind, and oh, then the Roman candle burst, and it was like a sigh of oh, and everyone cried, oh, in raptures, and it gushed out of its stream of rain, gold hair threads, and they shed, and oh, they were all green, dewy stars falling with golden, oh, so lovely, oh, so soft, sweet, soft. Anyone got a cigarette? Then all melted away dewily in the grey air. All was silent. She glanced at him as she bent forward quickly, a pathetic little glance, of piteous protest, of shy reproach, under which he colored like a girl. He was leaning back against the rock behind Leopold Bloom. For it is he stands silent with bowed head before those young, guileless eyes. What a brute! he had been at it again. A fair, unsullied soul had called to him, and wretch that he was, how had he answered? An utter cad he had been, he of all men, Leopold Bloom. But there was an infinite store of mercy in those eyes for him too, a word of pardon even though he had erred and sinned and wandered. Should a girl tell? No. 1,000 times no. This was their secret, only theirs, alone in the hiding twilight. And there was none to know or tell, save the little bat that flew so softly through the evening, to and fro. And little bats never tell. Thank you.